All right. Yeah, this topic seemed to be quite popular. Had a lot of people register for the webinar. So I'm looking forward to getting into this. So welcome to the Saturday morning webinar. Sorry we missed last week. I was traveling. Plenty has happened during the week. Very interesting week. And we're going to take a quick look at some of the action in the week before we get into the seasonality templates. Just before we get started, have a quick disclaimer, which you're not going to read, but standard stuff. And what we're going to talk about today in seasonality templates is the capability in EdgeRater for looking at stock seasonality. So the idea is basically if there's a move, if a stock tends to make a move during a certain month of the year or a certain period of time, not necessarily 1 month, it could be 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, or it could be just taking a move from today, the date of today, and sort of projecting it out by a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks and saying this same period in the previous X number of years, did the stock tend to move up or down? It's kind of a seasonality idea, but it's presented in a very concise way, very easily sortable, easy to view. And that's the whole idea behind EdgeRater seasonality. And there are two categories containing the templates. The main category is actually not called seasonality for historical reasons, but there's a chance I might change that to make it more understandable. But I called it annual trends when these first were published. And these templates have been in the system for probably about 5 or 6 years now. So a good amount of time. They are very, very useful. I frequently use these templates in combination with other things too. The other category containing a template is the hot topics category. This contains the moving average cross with upcoming seasonality. And this is a combination of taking a technical pattern, which is a cross, a moving average. You can define the two, the short period and the long period moving average, looking for a cross, but also looking for that seasonality coming up. So it kind of gives you a little bit more information that you've got this technical pattern occurring, but you've also got historically, it's a good time of year to be trading that particular stock. So that's the little intro there. Let's go ahead and jump right in to the program. First thing I like to look at pretty much when I'm looking at the performance of the week is the %B migration. This is really interesting, and you may have noticed if you've been to the EdgeRater website recently, you may have noticed that on the homepage of the website, I have been publishing, every time there's a new data update at the end of the day, I've been publishing a screenshot of the buckets report. So it's the same report that you can produce in EdgeRater by running the bucket migration template, but it's a snapshot of what happened on that trading day. So it's been a very interesting time period this last week with the S&P reaching all-time highs. But then on Friday, so the prior day was a little bit more extreme. We had 80% above the mid-band. And you can see the shadow bars here indicate the prior day of the buckets. And it's basically, as I explained in the %B buckets webinar, which there's a link to in the webinar recordings page, that each one of these bars represents a bucket for stocks in the S&P 1500. So if a stock in the S&P 1500 is above its upper Bollinger Band, it will count towards this bar up here, the greater than 1 bar. If it's below the lower Bollinger Band, it will count down here to the less than 0. And then in between is these buckets here. So you can see the prior day we had more stocks in the greater than 1 Bollinger Band, so above the upper Bollinger Band and at the upper Bollinger Band. And then on Friday, those two numbers came down. And there was a shift slightly over to the left. But also notice that there's been a shift over from the left to the right. So things have been kind of bunching up into around this 0.8, 0.9 number. So it's a pretty healthy sign, very strong. But if you were watching the market on Friday, the market there's not much happening for most of the day. And then in the last half an hour, there was I wouldn't say a significant move, but there was a strong move down in the last half hour. Nothing significant. If you look at the chart, it doesn't even register as anything to worry about. But it did push the VIX up by 0.5 point too. So you can always go there, the homepage, to look at the buckets report. But of course, if you have the program, you obviously can run. And I tend to run this on the S&P 1500, but I did mention you can run this on the CBOE weeklies list to good effect as well. But I'll run it on the S&P 1500. And this will just confirm about the migration of buckets. So I'm just running this. You can see it's producing the report. It takes a little time because it's going back through a lot of history to produce this report. This is exactly what you saw on the home page there. But this time we see the outflows from prior bucket and inflows into current bucket. And you can see that there's been a shift here. When you see these red numbers here, it means that stocks have been moving from higher buckets into lower buckets. So in the upper range, they've been moving into the lower buckets, but still a fairly healthy situation. And if we go back through the prior week, you can see where we started. And so we started the week here. Stocks kind of pushed up into their upper areas of Bollinger Bands, went quite high, and then had a little bit of a pullback. But this shape of this chart is still pretty healthy. So I wanted to show that. That's some context for where we are market-wise. As I said, the S&P 500 is at all-time highs now. The other thing I wanted to show was the US market summary. And when we had the webinar a couple of weeks ago, I mentioned that this blue line here, these are percent B1 day changes of some of the major market indexes. And when they're blue, it means that they have made a kahuna. So the percent B1 day change has been greater than 0.25, I think. And we had a solid blue line after this sea of red over here in percent B. And that, as Ian Woodward used to say, is something, you pay attention to points like this, because it can indicate a change in direction. And indeed, this time, what happened was we got this blue line. We went from red over here to yellow, and then we started to go green. And I mentioned this back in the webinar over on this day, that we started to turn yellow over here, and we've now gone solid green. So that's a pretty healthy market condition. If we take a look at the individual and I'm just going to select that. I have a list of those major market indexes over here. So I just wanted to quickly run through what they look like right now. So the SPX, okay, here it is, all-time highs. If we go over to let's just put this on top and then just scroll over here. So Dow Jones Industrial Average, all-time highs. And then we get into the NASDAQ 100, not quite there. Also, one second again. All right, yeah, so also we're getting over to the NASDAQ Composite, not quite all-time high as the Russell 2000 is not even, it seems to be the worst performing of all of the major market indexes. The S&P 100, all-time highs. The S&P 1500, all-time highs, and the IDX, which is the S&P mid-cap 400, not quite there. So the strength, and this is the New York, it's the NYSE composite. So, and this is all-time high. So the strength seems to be in the large cap stocks. And so the Russell, if you have been watching the Russell over this time, it's a bit of a laggard. So strength is in the large cap stocks. So that is our quick summary of what's happened in the week. And then this week also was super interesting for gold. I mentioned in the last webinar that we should really be paying attention to gold because it was made a critical move. And this week, gold has actually broken out to 5-year highs. So let's take a look quickly at GLD, which is the ETF that tracks gold. And you can see when we were talking about it in the last webinar a couple of weeks ago, we're at these levels down here. And there were some major resistance lines that, if we look at a weekly chart, some major resistance lines that have been in place for the last 5 years. And we have a weekly close above those lines. And when you translate this to actual gold futures, that is a close just above 1400 level. So it's going to be very, gold is now in play, and this is going to be very interesting to see if it can maintain above these resistance lines, or if it's going to be disappointing to all of the gold bulls as it has been in the last 5 years. So very interesting to watch here. So that's where we are. And we did talk about gold last time because it came up as a significant industry group. And if you remember from last time, you can now find in EdgeRater, there is in the gold miners group, GDX, there is a symbol list in EdgeRater. Let's just show that, called the ETF GDX. So that is the list of stocks that are in the gold miners group. So you can run any of the reports just on GDX if you like. Because gold is now like super interesting, I just wanted to quickly run the good, bad, ugly report on GDX Gold Miners Group and just see where we stand here for the last week. So that would be a week to date. And we can see that the best performing of these has been the Eldorado Gold Group. You see that's been beaten up quite heavily, and some signs of life emerging here in Eldorado. And if we go down a little bit, you've got, for the week, you've got 25% gain in CDE. Let's put this on a daily chart. We've got Yamana with 21%. The GDX Gold Miner Group is interesting in that it doesn't only contain gold stocks. Funny enough, you also have things like Pan American Silver. You have First Majestic Silver. So GDX is a miner, but not necessarily just a gold miner group of stocks. So, and I think silver tends to lag behind gold when there's some rally. So this could be, GDX could be a good play if you're looking to play gold, either up or down. Anyway, so really interesting stuff happening with gold, and we did talk about that a couple of weeks ago too. So yeah, so I think it's just going to be interesting to see if it stays above those resistance lines, and if we close the month next week, if we close the month out and we're still making monthly close above 1400, then it could be game on for a big move. Okay, let's talk about seasonality. So if you come down in your list of templates to you'll find the annual trends template category down here. And there's 5 different templates in here. The monthly 1 month is a template which will report and show you for each month of the year which stocks are performing better for those months. The monthly 2 month is taking, it will say take January and February and say what stocks have performed best over the last X number of years in January and February, and then it will do February and March and April, May, etc. The monthly 3 month will do the same, except it's going to be a 3 month period, so it'll be January, February, March, April, May, and so on, and you get the idea. For 4 months, it works the same way. I tend to only look at the monthly 1 month and also the now template. And now is different to these monthly templates in that, whereas monthly deals with the specific months of the year. So you can go and run it at any time. And you can say, I want to know what performs best in November. Boom, you run the monthly 1 month and you can find that information. But the now template is different in that it looks at the current date and goes forward, projects forward by 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, etc., and says what has performed best historically over the last X number of years for the next coming 1 week, 2 weeks, etc. So let's run these and show how they work. The very first one to run will be the monthly performance 1 month, and I'm going to run this on. I'm going to run on the list of CBOE weeklies. Now you can run this on the All USA list, which is worthwhile doing. CBOE weeklies list, it's going to be a little quicker for me to run. And also this list is a list of stocks that are very actively traded and will have weekly options. So if you ever wanted to play any of these, you can use options to make a play too. So this is the way the template reports. And you can see it's sorted by or ordered by months. So you have columns D, E, and F are for January, G, H, and I for February, etc. And then within each of those months, you have 3 columns. There's the average gain or loss over the last X number of years. I always say X number of years because it depends on how much data you have in your symbol list. Now, I have 10 years of data in my CBOE weeklies list. All right, and remember, you can set that information by coming into, when you have your list selected over here, if you pop up the chart, if you pop up the edit list, and then you go over to data update options, and by default, this will only have 2 years. So I recommend changing this to fetch the most recent 10 years. And then if you click on the data snapshot tab, you'll see how much data has been associated with the symbols in this list. You'll see the from and the to date. So a lot of them will be obviously 622 to 621, so 2009 to 2019. But some of the stocks don't have that much data, so they'll come in slightly later. So you can always see that in here. But if you wanted to, when you're doing seasonality, you need to have more than 2 years of data in the list. And 10 is recommended. You can even go more than that if you want. Okay, so then on the template, you can see the number, how many years out of the last 10 have been up years in each of the months, how many of the years have been down years, and what's been the average out of the up and down years. When you average all that out, what was the gain or loss? So we're about to come into July. And so a good way to sort this list is just sort by number of up years. So if you find that you've got 10s, so let's just zoom in a little bit here. If you find you've got 10 up years, 0 down years for July, these potentially have seasonal moves. Of course, this could just be random because you're looking at a lot of stocks. Obviously, some in just a random sampling would have 10 and 0, but also the seasonality is something that exists in stocks. Some stocks have good reasons for having seasonal moves, and here's where you can find it. I would recommend sorting this or filtering this list by clicking on this arrow, down arrow here, and then unselecting everything, and then just looking at the stocks that have either 10, 9, or 8. You can go further. It just depends on your own preference, but this is a good way to do it. So now I'm looking at stocks that have had good years over the last 10 years in July, good Julys in the last 10 years. And then you can sort by the average up move. So you can see if there have been, how good has that move been on average for July. And I think, if you had to, there's something I noticed just now. If we go back to sorting by up years, this is very interesting. You can see the Qs, QQQ. All right. That is your NASDAQ ETF, the Qs. Okay, has been great in July for the last 10 years. It's actually had no down July months in the last 10 years with an average return of 4%. That's something that you probably weren't aware of, but you can easily find that information with this template. So you can also see with the 10 and O's, you've got Alexion. Let's bring up a little chart here. And since I'm using one screen, I'll just put these side to side so we can see what's going on. Let's go back over to July. Okay, so here's Alexion. Obviously, we're looking at the current. We're not looking at the prior years here. We're just looking at the chart of the current price action. But you can see from the report that you've got 10 up years, 0 down years, average of 10% in July. Nordstrom has always had good Julys. It's currently not looking so healthy, but in the last 10 years, it's had an 8% return on average in July. Holly Frontier, MasterCard, which has been on a tear recently, has always had good Julys. As I said, the Qs always had good Julys. Technology sector ETF, I guess that goes in hand with the Qs. That has always had good Julys as well. And then you get into the stocks that have been slightly less. So they've had 9 of the past 10 years have been up years with 1 down year. And then you've got the percentage over here. So very quickly, that's a way to, that's what the report will show you. And all of the reports for seasonality show this information in this form. I'll quickly show, this is the monthly 1 month, and then the monthly 2 month, I'm not going to go into any detail on this, but I'll just show you that is dealing with the time period isn't just 1 month, but it's a 2 month time period. And you've got columns for January to February, February to March, March to April, etc. So if you want to expand over a longer time period, you can use these. But I always like to use the now template. And I think this might be the most popular of the seasonality templates in EdgeRater, because the monthly one will show you each month, which is great information. And you can kind of run that at the beginning of the year just to get a feel for what's good for each of the months. That information will not change throughout the year. So you can just run that once at the beginning of the year. But the now template will actually take today's date and say what's been good from today for the next few weeks. So let's take a look at that. Historical performance now. And you can see the information is presented in the same way, but the time periods above here are now projections of time out from current day. So you've got a 2 week period, a 1 month period, a 2 month period, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, and 6 months. So if you're looking for upcoming seasonality for the next 2 weeks, you can just click on your up, and you can see you've got Charter Communications and 9 and 0. So the fact that it doesn't have 10 is interesting, but that obviously means that this doesn't have 10 years of data. So that's why it only has, it's a 9 and 0, not a 9 and 1. Okay, it's been issued. That stock has not been running for 10 years. And then you go down through this list and you can find the numbers are not fantastic in terms of the average, but then we're only looking at a two-week period. If you look further for a 1 month period, and we find we've got a couple of 10 and O's with Eli Lilly, Procter and Gamble, and with 4% gains. So let's bring up a chart here. This is Eli Lilly and Procter and Gamble. Good defensive stock right there. But it's always had, this has been a good time of year over the next month for P&G. And this is how you can just find stocks that have good upcoming seasonality. Now, on its own, seasonality is interesting because it gives you some sense as to, has this been a good time of year for the stocks? Doesn't mean it's always going to be a good time of year. It could have been random information because we are analyzing a lot of stocks. And so there's going to be a distribution into these different categories just normally. So, but if you can use this as an addition to your other trading strategies, then it can give you a little more confidence in your trade. So one thing another template that is really useful, and this is probably the most useful of the seasonality templates if you're actually going to be looking at a particular trading strategy, let's say, then you would go into the hot topics category and look at the DM. DM stands for Dave McMullen. Dave McMullen. I worked with Dave on this template after looking at the upcoming probabilities, after looking at the now template, and he said that it would be very useful he likes to use the 820 cross of the moving average. If you could combine the 820 cross with upcoming seasonal probability, then you could have something very exciting. And so I put this together with Dave, and here it is. So let's just run this and see what comes up. Okay, so here we see we've got a little bit more information. There's a few more columns. The information we've already looked at in the now template is now repeated over here in these columns. So you've got this as a background, but then you have your cross, your moving average cross. And let's just go through these columns 1 second. Oh, and we see Dave McMullen is online. Hi, Dave. And thank you. Yeah. Dave says that that he likes this seasonality program because it's simple to run, and you can run it on as many years as you want. Thank you. Yeah. Thanks, Dave. Okay. So the 820 cross will the first set of columns then show you the 820 cross. If before you run the template, you do have an opportunity to change the moving average periods. If you prefer other periods than 8 and 20, you actually can change them before you run the template. But 8 and 20 are the default. This template is, Paul, this template is in the hot topics category. Hot topics. Look for DMMA cross. Okay, so the columns, let's take a look. Moving average cross, that's basically telling you when that cross of the 8 and the 20 occurred. When did it occur? We'll get a yes in the today column if it occurred using the current bar. If it occurred previously, then that will not be a yes, but you'll have the number of days since the cross occurred. And then it also will indicate whether there's an up cross or a down cross. The moving averages. So these are the periods, the fast period and the slow period. So the 8 and the 21 actually gives you the values of those. Moving average will tell you relatively whether the fast period moving average is above the slow period. It'll tell you the difference in terms of the percent between those two values. And then you'll also get the slopes of those moving average. And using the slope, you can determine whether there is an acceleration or a deceleration. That's what the rel column is showing you. Is there acceleration or deceleration? And that's based on the slopes of the moving averages. So let's take a look at some of these charts. Oh, and so you've got these columns, and you also have the columns of seasonality. Okay, and because all of these are together in one worksheet, you can do filtering, and it will apply to all of the columns, which makes it very, very useful. So you have a couple of ways that you could start. But one thing you might want is to filter by, if you're looking at trading some things that have had a cross today, obviously that would be useful to just filter by the today column. So I can say yes for today. So these are all the stocks in that list, and we might have to go to a larger list to find more candidates. But here are the 20 or so stocks that have had the moving average cross on Friday. And then we can go over to the seasonal probabilities. And if we were looking to place a trade, perhaps using options, and we wanted to be in a trade for a couple of weeks or a month, we could look at the prior performance over that period of time. So I could then sort by up months, and at the top of the list we have 2 9 and 1s and a 4% and a 5%. So JP Morgan and Kansas City Southern have come up. Let's take a look at the charts. All right, now let me turn on my template linking so that when I click on the chart, I'll actually see the 8 and the 20. All right, that is the green and the red. So you can see that there has been a cross today. This seems to be stuck in a bit of a range, but we know that there's been a cross today, and also that it has good seasonality over the next 1 month. So that's interesting. Let's pop this on the side, and let's come down through this list. Take a look. Okay, you've got a cross here. Again, has good upcoming seasonality. And here's a stock that's been has had a good performance since December through to April or May, like most of the market, has sold off like most of the market, and may be coming back, but it has not. Whereas the S&P 500 is now making new highs. This has not got there, so not as strong as the S&P 500 recently, but it has got the cross, and it has good upcoming seasonal probabilities. Okay, here's another one, AGN. It's got this cross. You can see the red and the green lines have crossed. Good upcoming seasonal pattern. And we'll go down through the list. Now, when I say I've actually not filtered by seasonal patterns here, so I may not be looking at good seasonal patterns. So what you could also do, in addition to sorting by your cross, is you can come in here and then just filter by number of up years. You say 9 8s. 9s and 8s might be good get the top ones. So then you only have 3 in that list. So it might be a good idea to run this because we've not got a lot of stocks appearing here. You could, just for fun, run this on the all USA list. Okay, we've got nearly 7,000 stocks in that list. It'll take a little longer to run. So let me just seeing if, did I already run that? I don't think so. So what I'll do is I will just run that right now. Here we go. Let's see how long this takes. Well, not too bad. You can see the progress bar working its way across the bottom here. We'll let that finish. I'll see if there's any questions. I'll go back through the list. Hi, everybody. Okay, great. Do you think the S&P will keep rising? Well, is that the $64,000 question? I mean, that's wow. I mean, that's a really interesting question. I think the Fed. We had Fed on Wednesday. Indicated that they're going to keep supporting the market. So I think we've got the Fed put in place. Trump is tweeting that deals with China are still possible, so that's good. There's lots of reasons why it might keep rising, but also I think that there's also some underlying market global market risk in that there's a global slowdown. So it's kind of interesting that it has risen so far, and I think a lot of people have been and are still bearish. But having reached all-time highs, I think a lot of people are changing and flipping their thought process, and at those points, I think it's always dangerous. So I think, we're right there right now, and I think it's a very, I'd say, interesting time. I think we could go higher, but I also wouldn't be surprised if we go lower. I mean, it's not. I'm sorry, it's a bit of a cop out, but there we go. If I was just to take a look at the percent B buckets, and I look at the market summary, I say the market is pretty healthy right now, and I think that's really, rather than try and predict into the future, you just take the market that we have today and say, it's a pretty healthy market. Okay. Yep, Charles agreed. XLK is the same as the Nasdaq in July. Yes. Paul, yeah, I told you where that template was. And Dave Marlin says yours has been using the 220. I assume you're talking about the 220 breakout, or are you talking about this template but using the 2 and the 20 instead of 8 and 20, using 2 and 20, or are you talking about the 220 EMA breakout, upside breakout template that we looked at last week? And Randy, the 10 cross 34, yes, you can change that. As I mentioned when you're running this template, before you run it, you have the way that you can tell on a template the parameters that you can change is they have an orange background. So here you can see the orange background is on the fast moving average period and the slow moving average period. So you can change that to whatever you want before you run the template. Now, the way that you would change that, and this is kind of important, is if you wanted to do what was your suggestion? The 10, 34. So you could say 10 here and then 34 here. But don't just So I've had a few questions like this. Don't just hit 34 like this and then press run. You need to press enter to exit from that cell so that it accepts that change. That's just the general way that spreadsheets work. In order for a cell to accept your edits, you actually have to either exit from the cell or press enter. And you can tell here that it has accepted the change because that you've got 1034 listed over on the right-hand side here. And once that's done, you can then hit the run. There is no, on this template, there's no EMA versus SMA option. But as is with every template, if you have a little bit of knowledge of the scripts, and you can find where the scripts are, and we'll probably do a webinar about this soon, is that you can actually modify the scripts to your own bidding. Now, a lot of people don't do that because it's a little more complex and you have to know a little bit more about the system and the formula language, but it is possible to do. And I know some people do that. I had a question during the week came in and somebody had designed a template that just had an incredible number of columns in it and it was kind of a merge of a lot of the different templates together. And it was very cool to look at, but in order to put that together, you have to have some knowledge of the way that the templates are constructed and the way that they use the formulas, but it's possible to do. Okay, yeah, Randy, you're welcome. Paul, thank you. Yes, this is an excellent template. I agree. And one thing to bear in mind is before a stock makes any kind of move, if it's going to make a long-term move, it has to have a cross of an 820. It has to happen. So if you're always looking at this every day, you're going to see things before they make large moves, and you can be alerted to them. Okay, so I ran this on a larger list, and let's just see if I remember. Is this the right? Yes. So this is the one with all of the data. And let's now do the filtering I was talking about. So I'm going to go to the today. I'm going to select the yes. So now I'm filtering this list down. So I'm only looking at yeses. You can see the list is not that big. And then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to look for the next 1 month. And I'm only going to look for 9s and 8s. It's pretty, it's a tough bar, but let's do that. And now we have a smaller list. We still have AMJ, obviously, that we saw before. And then the other one was, what was the other one? Kansas City Southern. So that's still in here. But we also have a bunch of others. And now I can sort these by average percent. And let's just go down through this set. So I'm going to put this over here. I'm going to put my chart over here and come down through the list quickly. So here you go, Northern Technologies International Corp. Okay, it's got this 820 cross, has seasonality, which is set to, it's been 8 and 2 with an average of 11%. Very interesting, $25 stock, but very low volume. The next one, also extremely low volume. EGY, Valco Energy. Low price stock has the cross that this template is looking for and good seasonality. Here we go, MMLP, Energy Transfer Limited. So I'm just going to quickly go down through these. I'm not trying to recommend anything. I'm just going to show you how to run this template to find your own trades. And okay, Paul, let's see. If I change the template to say a 3 crossing a 6, how can I change the chart to show a 3 crossing a 6 average? The chart should change automatically. It could be if you have the template linking on. then remember template linking is this button here. Okay, if I have that turned on, when you run the report, it should automatically change those time periods for you. And that's all based on in the chart layouts tab. Let's have a look here. Okay, I'm wrong with that. This does not automatically change. It's actually hard coded in here to be an 8 and a 20. So yeah, sorry about that. That's worth looking at though, and I can get that to change automatically. So yeah. Now, out of interest, so I answered the question in a roundabout way. What's going to happen with the S&P 500? Just in general, can we have like, you all just type in, let's say in the next couple months, S&P 500 higher or lower? Just type in higher or lower. Let's get a poll, see what people think. I'll tell you how many people said higher and lower, but we need more people to do it. Okay. Interesting. Yep. Okay. Yeah, so okay, so the result of this quick little poll is out of about, I'd say, 20 people responding, we have about 15 say higher, 5 say lower. How about that? And then there are concerns. Obviously, there's some caveats here. Iran, tweets, all kinds of things to worry about. Double tops. Yep. All right. Well, I mean, that's interesting. And it's hard to, if you're a contrarian, to to be on, if everyone's on one side, it's the market rarely does what the consensus opinion is. That's the kind of a worrying thing. But I say rarely. Obviously, sometimes it does. Am I a contrarian? I wouldn't say an outright contrarian, but in terms of psychology of the market, I'm definitely more of the opinion that the market will try and confound the most people. Yep, see you, Dave. Thanks for coming. Do you prefer pullbacks over breakouts? Well, that's an interesting question too. I think I like the gold breakout. But if there's, I think that if you're going to be trading in a shorter time frame, over a couple of weeks or a month, then pure breakouts are kind of hard to trade because you probably do get some kind of reaction from breakouts. But if there's underlying strength and you believe that the move will continue, then looking for a pullback is a good way to play it. On the other hand, you don't want to miss, if there's something you've been waiting for and there's a breakout like in gold and you don't want to miss it. What do you do in that case? Again, options can be a good way to play that. Hey, Randy. What's that? The HIHO goes on a run from now all the way up to 4 months with 8s and 9s, and then keeps going with 7s for another 2 months. Pretty good odds. Oh, okay. They're looking at oh yeah, high HIHO, and that's another thing you can look at is as Randy has pointed out here. Although the volume in this, I'd be very wary of this because the volume, had 0K volume on Friday. But yes, you can look at this and then look over the other columns. You can say, look, in the next 2 weeks, it's had an 8 and a 2. Over 1 month, it's had an 8 and a 2 with 10%. Over 2 months, 8 and a 2 with 12%. And if you just look over to the right, you get an idea for consistency of that move over this time of year. Yeah, Jeffrey, Alpha 21 scan seems good for continuation trades. And that's about relative strength. So, I mean, there's lots of, the thing is, there's lots of ways to trade. Everyone has their own plan. What I'm trying to do with the program here is give tools for all different styles of trading. And I can kind of give you an indication as to what I like, but I don't just put what I like into the program. And I listen to people who are really expert at trading, like Dave McMullen, George Lee, and others who are in the system. So and we talked about, and if you haven't seen the Gil Morales presentation yet on the undercut and rally template, that is definitely worth a look. If you have seen recently the website, I have made a change to the, if you go to the support area and then look at the webinar schedule, this is where you all signed up for the webinar today. You'll also see a list of all the prior webinars, and you can view any of the replays from here too. It may take a while for this to come live, but when they are here, you'll be able to see the replays. And so definitely, if you haven't seen this one, the undercut and rally template, view this replay and take a look at the Gil Morales session. That's Gil Morales, who is the author of several trading books. A lot of people online here know Gil, have met him personally, but he wrote the Inner Trading Cockpit with the O'Neill disciples, and several other books. And this presentation he gave at the Pacific Northwest Trading Workshop that we ran in Vancouver was one of the most popular sessions, and very interesting, talking about how the market has changed from back in the day where trading breakouts, and this kind of comes back to what we're talking about here, trading breakouts was a recommended approach, and you have an 8% stop and all that sort of thing. Whereas today, it's you tend to get these markets where you get undercuts of prior lows and then rallies back to new highs, and so it's much more risk reward efficient to trade these undercut and rally type moves, and that's find that in Gil Morales' session over here. Super interesting. And there's a template. So he made that presentation at the Pacific Northwest Trading Workshop, and then I put together a template that will alert you to undercut and rally situations. Yep, you're welcome, Charles. Oh, Paul, that's good. I wonder. So Paul is saying that when you change the time period, so let's just do a little experiment here. I think I spoke about about these templates that I wanted to talk about. So really, we're on a question time right now, and so this is a good time to ask any lingering questions you have. And let's come over here, and we'll just run this as an example. And closing down all my reports over here. Let's clean this workspace up. Okay, so we've got 1034. Let me run this on a very small list. I'll run it on the gold miners. So looking for a 1034. All right, here's gold miners with 1034 cross. And now if I click on here, let's see what moving averages we have. Look at that. We have a 1034 moving average. Yes, it does automatically change. And why did I think it doesn't change? Oh, you know what, Paul? The reason I thought it was hard-coded is that you see in the chart layouts, you see 1034 hard-coded, but the key is this is actually linked to the parameters on the template info page. So this 1034 here drives the chart layout indication over here. So whenever you change that, it will change this, and that affects the chart that you see. So yes, it does automatically change. Thank you for clarifying that. I thought it did, and I was kind of surprised when I saw it looked like it was hard-coded, but there's a lot of templates in the system now, so it's hard to keep track of everyone. New gold. Now that's an interesting, anyway. So one thing that I wanted to say is with the templates so far, so there's a lot of templates in the program right now. I think we can all agree. And I think there's so much information in here that it's maybe not super beneficial to keep providing a new template every month. I think it's going to be better for everybody if instead of doing that, improvements are made to the program to make it easier to use, to make the existing templates easier to use, to make the whole program easier to operate. And so the monthly updates I'm going to be focusing on are going to be there will be templates coming, of course, because there's still some things I need to fill out. Like we need more of the buy the fear, sell the greed strategies. There's 2 in here right now. There's another 6 to come. So they will definitely come. But to produce, rather than spend the time each month to produce a brand new template, let's just focus on getting the program much more intuitive, make it much easier to find the templates that you need to find, make it easier to use the symbol lists, and all sorts of things like that. So if you have subscribed to the monthly updates, then you will get all of these changes with your monthly update. And of course, you're going to get the data, the EdgeRater data, and you'll get all the new templates too. So that is my thought right now. And I just thought I would share that with you. And I believe that will be very useful. And I think doing these webinars on a weekly basis or as close to weekly basis as possible is also going to be useful and make the program more useful for people. So anyway, let me know what you think about that. You can either let me know in the comments here or send me an email. But that's my thought right now. Good. Okay. Now let's take a look back through the list again. Ta-da. Okay, Edmund, is there an all common stock list without the ETFs? There is not specifically something that's been kind of published. So no, you would, in order to find that, in order to get something like that, you would have to construct that yourself. It's not hard to do. It's just a matter of doing it. as I said in the Getting Started with EdgeRater webinar, all of the symbol lists exist in your EdgeRater folder. So you have under your documents, you'll have an EdgeRater folder, and under EdgeRater, you'll have symbol lists. Sorry, I'm looking at that on another screen. So yeah, you go into Documents, EdgeRater, Symbol Lists. All of the symbol lists are in here. So if you found a source of common stocks, you can just extract it to a text file, and it would look, if you opened this up in a text editor, would look just like this, with the symbol, comma, and then the name. Or it could just be symbol on each line, symbol, in uppercase. And so if you just construct that from, maybe you find a source on the internet of common stocks, then you can construct your own list from that and put it into this folder, EdgeRater symbol lists. Once it's in here, it automatically appears in your dropdown over here. And therefore you have your own list that you can modify and keep up to date. Yeah, Charles, definitely that's the idea. Occasional template updates for sure, and ease of use improvements, just to make the whole thing just there are a few things that have come up over the course of the last little while, and doing these webinars has been a great way to find this. Is there's a few things that it seems would be useful to change. So one thing that comes up frequently is it's not obvious where all the templates are. So you can always go to the What's New category, and you can scroll down through the different months, and you can find what was new that month, and it will tell you where generally they are. So category, say, oh, this one is in, this is the Mark Minervini template, it's in the George Lee category. So now I have to go to George Lee category down here, and then I can find the Mark Minervini template. So that's where it is. That's really the only way of doing it. So things like that, it would just be a lot easier if there was some easier way to find the templates. Things like that will be a general sort of ease of use improvement. Thanks, Thomas. I'm glad you like the webinars. Okay, all right, guys. We are okay, Michael. Yeah, how to navigate the templates exactly. One of the things that was put in the program to kind of help with that is I know that when you have your set of things that you like to do daily, weekly, or however often you do it, rather than have to go to each category to find the template, the idea of being able to put a star beside it so that it appears in the favorites category is good. And that's great for, this is just where you go once you've got everything discovered. But then how do you find new things? That's the key. Where do you find the new things? And because you might want to add new things to your favorites list. And if you only ever look at your favorites list, you forget about all of the other great templates that are in the program. That's one of the reasons for running doing these webinars, is to try and highlight each time a new template. And then you can put that into your rotation. But just making things easier to find will be, I think, very useful. Okay. All right, I think that's it. Unless I think we've got all the questions, and thank you everybody for your time. It's fun to do this, and I appreciate everybody attending and spending some of your weekend with me here. So thanks a lot, and look out for the next update for next weekend's webinar. You'll find that I will send out an email, but if you just keep this webinars page tagged, you can always go in here and find out what's coming up too. Okay, thanks a lot, everybody. Have a good rest of your weekend. Bye for now.